We had some other news out of Europe this morning. Charles Forelle, we had the ECB rate decision and Mario Draghi's press conference. Did we learn anything?
He didn't do anything. Well, the rate, that's not
Well,
entirely true. He did something and got up there and talked for a while.
The
ECB kept rates constant at the low 1% rate that they've had for some time now. This really reflects a lot of tension inside the Eurozone. Inflation is above where the ECB wants it to be, and particularly above where the very anti-inflation German faction of Europe wants it to be. So there is some strong pressure on Draghi to do what they call start plotting an exit strategy in ECB jargon and figure out how you're going to get out of this low rate environment. At the same time, the dismal economic numbers and the dismal numbers in Spain in particular have made it hard for the ECB to raise rates. So they're sort of stuck between these two forces, and they said, you know what, we're going to punt and not do anything.
Well, Charles, is there any pressure from, say, the U.S. or the sort of global central banking system to say to the ECB, you've got to keep rates low, you've got to stay in step with what everybody else around the globe is doing to try and continue to prime the pump on our economies?
Well, I think that's been a long-term, there's been a long-term sort of melding of the minds among global central bankers that generally rates need to be low right now to make everybody happy, and everybody's going to sort of play by those rules. So that's certainly true, and there certainly is that sense of camaraderie, if you will, among central bankers that probably the low-rate environment is the right thing to do. But keep in mind that, particularly in Europe, you can never underestimate the power of the German faction inside the ECB in particular, and inside Europe broadly. Europe has in the past marched to its own tune a little bit in the recent past, and there is pressure from important corners of Europe to figure out a way to get out of the low rate environment.
This is interesting too, because you mentioned there earlier that people are talking about exit strategies for the ECB, and it seems to me that gets to really the heart of how the markets look at this, how maybe even the ECB looks at it. Are they not? Is there any reason that they should be even talking about exit strategies given what's going on? We know Greece isn't settled. We've just talked about Spain. Spain's getting worse. Portugal is probably going to come back. I mean, Europe is nowhere near the point where they should be talking about exit strategies. Again, is this a case of just the markets getting way ahead of themselves because the central bank flooded some money out there?
Well, look, the central bank is trying to walk a difficult line. It needs to try to maintain its credibility as an inflation-fighting institution, and that's its principal mandate. It never tires of talking about that as its principal mandate. But there is no doubt that these are not normal times, and that the ECB recognizes that it needs to act abnormally, and it has all of these so-called non-standard measures. The long-term LTRO, the 3-year LTRO is one of them, and frankly, in some sense, though it's not technically a non-standard measure, the low rate environment is sort of out of their normal step. Inflation is above where their normal target is, and in normal times, the ECB would be thinking about raising rates now, but they're not.
Yeah, and Charles, just quickly, it's worth noting that the ECB's mandate is distinct from that of the U.S. Central Bank, and that the Fed is charged with trying to keep the labor force fully employed or as fully employed as possible, and thus keep the economy stimulated. But the ECB is really just essentially an inflation-fighting tool.
Yeah, they have some financial stability role as well, but they're not charged with being concerned about unemployment. That having been said, it's very difficult not to be concerned about unemployment in Europe. I mean, the Spanish unemployment's 23%. It's just staggering. So it's obviously an issue that weighs on policymakers' minds, no matter whether it's part of your mandate or not.
Yeah, that is absolutely brutal. All right, Charles Forelle, thank you very much.